Good morning and welcome to Wake and Wellness. It has been a little bit since I've done a last video, since actually the Into the Universe episode 1, which I just posted, but haven't, and I don't want to get too much into promoting. Today we are going to talk about trauma and its ability to hold us in place, its paralyzing effects. I've been doing a lot of deep healing, which is why it took me some time to even do some more videos. So I may be a little bit less succinct in speaking and tapping in that kind of way. But it has been very clarifying and reflective, all that I've been going through and seeing how all that I put out is what I'm led back to. And so there were times where out of nowhere I had flashes and realizations of, wow, this is the reason why this doesn't work when I do this, or because I'm this way because of some kind of trauma that happened and I did not internalize and understand it as trauma. And so it was as if it was a dark blockage just there, like one of the the cinder blocks in Mario, but pitch out like pitch black, so you couldn't see what it was. And then a light got shown on it, and not only was it revealed, it also was somewhat like absorbed or dissipated and able to replenish, not take away or cut off energy, but replenish me and rejuvenate. So it was, and it has been a very revealing cleansing for me recently. And so that's, I guess, why I had to come and talk about trauma, because I started to realize how often, and they can be the slightest things, and it's typically things that are very important, but either they're so important and so shocking that we instantly, and the subconscious goes into effect, and it instantly, subdues it, so that we aren't just, taken along for a shock or just taken out. But it's things that we also won't always mark as like, oh, of course, that's the reason why I don't like pop, because I went to a carnival and I got dumped and we were drinking our favorite pop. Like, it's things that can seem and be so minor, but we assign so much energy and emotion and everything to it. We assign everything to it, and that's the reason why it does hold the power and jurisdiction over us. And if we want to bring in temporality into it, in the past, or maybe it may hold us in the present, or the future, excuse me. So let's get into it. I'm actually going to read a quick excerpt out of my book, Hacked: Observing Results. With one thing at a time in mind, it is much easier for us to observe results. Smoothly diving into awareness. When we consciously choose to befriend change, there's a peculiar relationship that begins to occur between the mind and the body. The mind making sense of, or tracking, whether we want to call it time, a moment, or event, must link to something. The something that the mind links this physical marking of reality to is emotion. It's vital to note the connections, because, like our math teachers emphasized every year, you will not be able to progress to the next level of math without the prior. But of course, does anything in life exist outside of this truth? No. And bearing that in mind, the body communicates through a language we have named emotion. And so I'm going to go right into it because it explains a little bit further, but that's so important to understand. One of these things are existing. Obviously, we know they are. We know people have feelings. We know people have emotions. But to be able to properly define them, and defining not so much, we can say with words, but not so much with words, more than with awareness. Actually having awareness, because when we have these words and definitions, they can matter, but if we don't have real awareness to what they mean, then we don't have any way to identify with them. So that's actually what's most important. Why this ABC approach? Every time we make a choice, in order to log it, our mind stores it. How? As an emotion. Where? In the body. This is the beginning of awareness, recognition of the relationships between both mechanisms which are a part of the one. Continuously examining this relationship is the method to clarifying how we feel about anything. That is awareness. Having a clear-cut distinction about what makes us feel good, behave more empowered, and strengthens our sense of identity and purpose opens us to potential. Every single one of us has felt this awakening resembling a deep inkling of what we have been internally urged to remember. If we're able to truly change, we must embrace the idea of a new paradigm while envisioning what type of person we must become to embody it. We must accept the process follows natural laws and not our human conception of time, sense of urgency clock, or any other delusional construct we have to bottle and label the moment or seize our sense of existential anxiety. And then it goes into why the one thing at a time mentality is very important. But to connect it to what we're talking about, it's important to understand that the understanding of storing of emotion and connecting that to an event. Like I said, oh, I got dumped at that fair, so now I don't like the pop, because now they're connected, and it's connected by a feeling of something I once liked so much now carries the weight of discontent, of unfulfillment, of not being what you desire or having what you desire. And so realizing that instantly redefines it redefines our understanding and our awareness of awareness. We now understand why awareness is so important and what it actually offers us. It offers us a clarity that no other kind of viewpoint, if we must call it, can offer us. So with this new refined state of awareness, or definition, but in turn actual awareness of awareness, we are now more equipped to looking at ourselves as we start to understanding that all is an extension of self. Why do you exactly feel maybe not good enough because of that event at the carnival? Why do you feel that that was even possibly caused by you? It may have not been. Why? Understanding that, we start to break down the associations. And as we start to break down the associations, we start to break down and redefine our relationship with the associations. The chapter of Observing Awareness mentioned that prior to that, prior to observing results was learning relationship. And we got into relationship and why relationship is so important, because we have to start to understand that one, relationship is all. Relationship is the web of interconnectedness of reality. And so when we do start to understand that, then we can start to see how all is an expression of that, as we are, as our expressions of ourself. And so when we can start to understand that, then we start to be a little less defensive, because we can break down our defenses, because we can look at them different, and not just with eyes. Obviously, we can start to look at them with insight, with inner awareness, which is actually wisdom when it's actually put into action. And so when we really start to feel, wow, I was defensive about this because I did not, let's say, feel I was good enough. Then you can start to say, why don't I feel good enough? You can start to ask the questions that lead us to the door, that once we open it, eventually, and the mind's walking us there if we get that in tandem with the body's not shut down. If we can get that in tandem with the spirit is desiring true clarity. And so I think that is really, it's a part of the magic. It's a wonderful thing that even as I'm talking about it, I've obviously caught my stream and I am in flow. When you do start to do these things, it feels like you are a puzzle or that labyrinth that, like, okay, it doesn't matter how long you spend studying yourself and unlocking this or that. You may have been like, oh, I want to rid myself of anxiety. And you do that, and then you realize, wait, now like it's a whole new playing field that opens up, and you may now get feelings or flashes of joy. You may start feeling things, and you're like, wait, but I already thought that I knew what was going on inside. And it's just this never ending unfolding. And so I think that is actually the fun and the power that I am coming to share with you guys. As you can see, I can't stop smiling because that's what I started to realize. I started to realize there are some experiences that are all right, supposed to be positive, and I guess even the other way, and I may have just not identified them yet, so it has to be. There are some that are supposed to be negative that I am deeming as positive, and vice versa. But because I've had a traumatic experience, or trauma has, come into play in that scenario, the viewpoint is just twisted. I'm relating them in a way that's not positive or conducive to successful behavior or sustainable behavior or a balanced, type of behavior or existence. And so when you start to realize that, it's important that we decide to take action right then, because if we do not, in a very real sense, what begins to happen is the trauma begins to take hold of your life. That's how the trauma holds you in place. So if you're constantly thinking about that past experience, one, you're already trapped in the past. Most of your actions are coming out of that past experience and many people may say, well, we're always living out of the past. That's not true. So it's not untrue. But there are times when we spend too much energy. It's just like anything, it's a balance. And many of us, I believe, do spend so much time in a past relationship or a past circumstance, a past whatever it is. And a lot of us also do it in the future, in that future tense. And that's why our experiencing anxiety at such a high rate, just living so far in the future and just not having the understanding or the balance and the inner awareness and the wisdom to remain within the present, to examine what comes to us within the present. Because if we did, we would not actually desire at all to shift forward so quickly or to shift backwards and try to, oh, let me get it all back. It would be more of a, oh, okay. It's that I get it, and you get it as your path allows you to understand it, because nobody else is able to. When you do have, I'm not trying to get too far into this, but when you do have your life review, however that comes about to you and however many times that you have that, there is no one else that is reviewing your life. Like, there's no other human or person that is reviewing your life with you and actually able to judge you. You realize, like, oh, I'm actually viewing this camera strip like solo, like it's me. And you may be doing this with source if you're conscious in this, but there's not another human that we've ever, feared judgment on this kind of plane. That's right there, like, oh man, you really made that choice? No, because that doesn't even matter. What really matters is your relation to the trauma that you had or have and are continually perpetuating, because we have not shone the light on it. We've not put the light of awareness onto it and clarified that that's even a part of our schema, of our control drama, of how our life is playing out. And so that in itself, just understanding that part, I'm not even gonna say getting into and doing stuff, is that right there is monumental, just to understand that part. Because once you do, you start to go, oh, of course I need to excavate this, because nobody is perfect. So we all have trauma, and we all have things that we could do better, or actually get us to a better place of, get us to true equilibrium, get us to a place of alignment with the universe, so that we are producing in a way that is conducive for for the greater good of all. So the trauma, I've done the trauma episode before, but the trauma that I was able to, again, making itself clear to me was very important, because it's just like talking to a therapist, but being open enough with yourself to address those things. And so doing so really had me, as I was somewhat meditating, and I often at times just listening to music, there was something that sort of clicked, and I just went, oh my God, and I just started laughing. Like, that is actually a habit, or yeah, that is a habit, whether or not it's eating something that I desire or don't desire to, whether it's sitting a certain way, talking a certain way, thinking in a specific pattern, no matter what it is going through that cycle of repetition, because for whatever reason at the current moment I think that that's either the best possible thing, or that is the best that I can do in that specific avenue. So realizing that, and then having some of these things just a light shining on them, like, wait, that's not even something you should be thinking about, or this is why you think about it, and the reason why you think about it is actually what you need to be focusing on, and how to shift this whole thing around. And so having some of those, again, just insights, really has put the spark in me to talk about it, despite, I think that's what it was, I wanted to not look at it, like, in a very unconscious way. I didn't want to shine the light back on it, because one, I'm a person that feels deeply when I do feel, and I did not want to feel that pain again, especially, and it's funny because on the healing journey, and this is when you need to be doing it, especially thinking that you've already healed in certain ways, or this is probably the real and deeper reasons, like when you, like, trauma that really shocks you, and however it shocks you, trauma, when it does give you your jolt, it causes you to do this and lock up. And so when you do really experience that on the deepest, stuff just starts to, for the most part, again, when we talked about this repression, stuff starts to get pushed down, because you're like, oh yeah, no, we're not going through that again. And so when you do that, you actually do forget. And that's what happened when I started shining the light on some of the things, just literally within my being. Things just started to come back, and I just started to remember things. And so I'm going to give you one of the examples. So I was talking to, I think I was talking to someone, and I may have just been thinking about it to myself too. And it wasn't until I talked to the person that it hit me that I had this conversation with myself. And I may have spoken about this once before. I was wondering, why don't I Palo Santo anymore? Why don't I use the holy wood for cleansing? Because I used to every day, all the time. I never ran out. And so I was thinking about it, and I just couldn't figure it out. I'm like, it was and it is one of the biggest blessings in my life. So why did and how would it just slip away? And especially under, like, just whoop, and my consciousness didn't even pick up on it till a long time after, like many months, maybe a couple years. And I think I just kept saying, oh, I'm gonna get some, and I didn't realize. And then one day I think I'm driving, and I had this conversation with somebody slightly about Palo Santo, and I said, oh my gosh, wow, I know why. Like, and it just literally was just like, whew. And I could see And I'm like, wow, it seemed like, again, like I said about the cinder block, it seemed like it was hidden, but it wasn't really. It was hidden by request. And so that's so wild because it can be the smallest or the biggest thing. It's depending on how you assign the value to the emotion, to the experience. And so it was wild because I had to examine this relationship. And I'm laughing at the situation because I remember how mad I was. I remember the whole thing because I could put myself in it because there's so much energy and so much intensity still sitting in that moment, whether or not we believe that it's on a linear timeline or it's planned itself out in the just in the now, in all different, let's say, all different ways, times, and directions. And so it's wild because now I'm going back through and I'm like, wow. So the last time that I remember doing it, the first thing that popped up, I think I started laughing, but I also felt the anger. I felt how mad I was because it was with a friend and it was with one of her friends. Like she's a lifelong like friend of mine, and they're like a sister. And I was at her friend's house and she said like I want to hear, we got into like something about the Palo Santo, and she's like I want to hear you do how you like cleanse and the ritual. And so like I said one of my mantras while while cleansing it, and as I'm doing, and I even think I said in the beginning like, yeah, I better not laugh, like, and I still did it, and knowing that it was gonna happen anyway. And so as I'm doing it, they just bust up laughing like, bro. And so I'm mad, like in my feelings, like, they done had me do my sacred ritual, you feel me, gave him my mantra and everything. And so I'm heated. And so after that though, like I was just like, oh, okay, you know what? And I should have said something from there, but I didn't. And I was just mad hot. And so after that, I hadn't used Palo Santo that I can remember. And and again, that association that I just talked about, how mad I was, like I stopped using one of my number, not one of my number one cleansing ritual tool because of that experience and the association being linked so tough, and then that being her being so close to me, and then it happening in front of somebody that I didn't know and just had met like for the first time, like that, like all of those dynamics. It's so crazy. It's so funny now. Like, but then, oh my God. And I could feel it. I had to step in and I didn't even have to try as hard. Why? Because so much energy already rested there. Like, so I just had to think about it. And as soon as I thought about it, I pretty much was consumed by the memory because again, that's how much energy was there, and that's how an experience is. If you've been in a car accident and anybody ever like you gotten close or they hit the brake quick, your body already starts to jolt and sends you down those energies like, hey, you need to brace because we going in again. And so it's the same way with trauma, and the more traumatic and the more traumatic the experience, the more intense the experience. And so the more ready the body gets into that fight or flight. And the only way to start letting those go, to laugh how I'm laughing about this experience now, and let me say this before I forget to, it's more important than like just laughing at it. More important than just laughing at it is to be able to be at peace with it and know how you were supposed to grow from it. I was supposed to say something when it got to me so that it didn't become a bigger thing, because it did become a bigger thing, and it became something that like, dang, I lack trust now and somebody that was so close to me because of that experience, and being felt like, I just got put on Front Street just to get clowned. Like, because the experience is a sacred ritual to me. So I was supposed to, and I learned that now, like for me, I have to say something then, because if I don't say something then it's just gonna build up, and that's typically how it works with people. But I am too charged and will get too emotional. I have too many different. I'll let too much get into it. My mind energy get into it, and then once that happens, it's a wrap. And so I need to say something to dispel it, and which is really just talk it out through the truth. You feel me? So that it does get dispelled. I didn't do that then, and I was so I was out of body and I was out of pocket. And I'm glad that I'm able to grow from that now, and I actually have the desire to say sorry. So if my old friend, she ever sees this, I'm sorry that I held that against you. That was, man, that was way too funny. And I can only imagine on their end, you feel me? It sounds like I'm saying some like ancient chant, you ain't never had this, and I'm waving this wood around like in a room, you feel me? Like I be rolling too. So that's also another thing, like understanding that. It's just crazy, and that's how life really is. And also that's how powerful trauma is. Exactly, or going back and looping, segueing back into where I was, the more intense that it is, the more traumatic, or the more traumatic it is, the more intense that it is. And so, even if I knew those things then, the irrationality of the trauma is about to override all that. And it's about to be like, we don't even care about all the truth you just said. Like, it's out the window. Mug's clowning me. Depending on your pre-existing trauma, all the stuff that you've already experienced back in your life before, and your values, all that stuff makes up that experience right then and there, how you act, and then how it carries out from then on. So it's funny now, it's funny to me, but it wasn't funny then, and it took me a long while to get over that, like a long while. But now I'm glad to be in the place that I am. And when I do typically get into these kind of things, now I've been able to. I'm a person that like I hold on tight no matter like what it is. Y'all just heard what the story was, but again, I do hold that sacred to me, and so that's why it was very. That was like, oh no, like this the last thing you clown tight. But in that same regard, like I said, I understood, because if I was on that, I probably would have been rolling, like I said, and so it's just one of those things that you have to be able to understand, yeah, your maturity level, and I'm not even talking about on the day-to-day, like societal, like how people, like your ability, your awareness level, because that's really what we're talking about. Your awareness level really projects where you are in your consciousness, and that has nothing to do with, it actually has everything to do with everyone else, but when it comes to you, it has nothing to do with everyone else. It has to do with how you define yourself in relation to the world and what is within the world and all that comes with that, which people do, but we're not the center of the universe and all that is. We're part within it. And when we can start to understand that, then I can say, I know what my relation is to life. I know what my relation is to, you know, even if I feel my purpose, I know what my relation is to my purpose. If I say speaking is my purpose, and speaking about what I'm speaking about is my purpose, I need to know the relation to how that relates to life, and then how I relate to that, so that I can then make that connection and then take that further. Like, and to be able to keep doing that and cycling in a way that goes up as opposed to spiraling down, I believe is the only way. I believe it is evolution, which I believe is purpose in itself. I believe that consciousness is I believe that consciousness does experience itself in that way. Even when we do make the pits down, I think we learn just as much. But excuse me, I believe that that is the way that we get to the consciousness, whether we say it's pine cone or single-mindedness or Christ consciousness, however we want to define that, unity, one. Being at the point of singularity, I feel, is when we understand like they say that the source, as source understands us, and we understand all of our parts within that. And I believe that is what we are aligning ourselves with. And to do so, we have to be able to address that part that wants to push away all the stuff that has us like, like cut up and just like, man, like I just don't want to deal with it. Like put it in the drawer and keep it to the side. You feel me? Like all those things are exactly what makes us equipped to do what it is that we are meant to do. We are meant to utilize those things and place them within our arsenal of really, as I say, arsenal makes me think of hiatus coyote, choose your weapon. Like they use music as their power, as their, as a weapon of choice, or me using speech as a way of trying to connect. If my goal is to connect and I go, oh, how can I do so? This would have to be the one of the things that I have as a skill to be able to do so, is to speak and connect in that kind of way, or at least express and try to communicate what it is that I have, or that I am doing, or that I feel aligns with my purpose here. So I believe the only way that we do that is by addressing the trauma. And like I said, a lot of it may be so dug down that it just seems like, oh no, it's not, like, oh no, I don't have this or I don't have that. But trust when you start, like, I think I've been watching too many cave movies. Trust when you start to move rocks and start to excavate and go deeper. There are things and there are reasons why you would rather say, oh no, I'm good. Because when you go and you see and you peer into, like, just short of seeing source, and even when you see source, it's even more crucial because now you got the light of like 10,000 suns just peering in on you. Like, prior to that, it's pretty dark. It's probably is not probably it's as dark as you've ever seen dark. And some of those things may come in thought forms. Some of those things are coming in thought forms, or the way that the subconscious or unconscious works that I don't even have, I'm not going to even act like I have a handle on. But the ability to bypass us saying how we want some stuff and being like, no, you're not ready for this. And really, putting us in check. There are, got tapped in. There are so, let me not say it like this. There are things that go beyond our understanding, no matter, especially logical sense. And so I don't want to even act like, but things that go beyond when we start to tap in and start to have understanding, and then try to bring these things back into our normal day-to-day experience and speak about them, but they go beyond that and they transcend that. That's the kind of living and experience that we start to have when we release trauma. When we start to release trauma, we start to say, I have a skill, or I have a place in the world, or I have a relationship to the world in a way that I was not conscious of before. I am clear of that now. I understand that I may be a quick thinker. I understand that I may be able to piece things together quickly. I understand, and I was sure before. Anybody could have told me that I was before I had clarity, and I would have said no. But now I have them, even when doubt comes in, but I know that that doesn't define what actually is and how I am in, again, relation to the world. No matter what any other person says or whatever circumstance happens that makes me start to belittle or start to question that skill. That is a connection with authenticity. That is a connection with, that's tapping down into, that's releasing a trauma. You know when trauma starts to release, because it feels like, I've envisioned it, and I've done meditations. I've done them in the shower, and I also do them days specifically work well with the sun. I do them to where it's almost like a squid and it's like releasing like black ink. And that's how I typically see and feel and envision. It is as if there's a darker energy just in it. Just feels sorrowful. It feels like it just harbors melancholy and just like that dark gray cloud, that people talk about when they have depression. And it just starts to release in the shower. I see it start to go out as, like I said, like a squid when it releases its ink. But with the sun, I've had it happen in multiple ways where it felt like it wouldn't move and I didn't know what to do, but I was obviously called to the sun to meditate within the sun. And it started to break down and dissolve those blockages. And I could feel my heart getting a lot light green. I could feel me almost being like a car with fuel. Like I was out and now I'm getting gassed up, and I could feel how it was just making me be more at unison with self. It's something that, you don't need anybody else to. You're gonna try to do this multiple times, many times. Some people always will validate it through other people, that it's an experience that is true, that is an experience that is worth noting and talking about. But only you can feel when you are authentic, when you're activated and you go, I am in my purpose. That's actually the video that I wanted to do, doing what we are meant to do. But it's funny how I'm doing that same video through trauma, working through my own trauma. Doing what you're meant to do is working through your trauma so you can get back to a place of equilibrium. Of course, we're always gonna have something that's coming in and trying to throw us off balance. But the way that we learn to deal with these and level the playing field with them, to understand that's someone that is the master of their universe, that goes, first and foremost, I call and I attract these experiences into my life. So whether it is the stressors of a great opportunity, I called them in and I hoped for them and now I got them. So let's go as hard as I can. That's the mindset, that's the framework that we need to work with. And whether it's one of negativity, we have to rid ourselves of victimhood, of the, oh my God, why is this happening to me? It just always happens to me. It needs to be more of a, just like the other, I call this experience into reality so that I could upgrade myself, so that I could push past this perception of limitation. That's all we're facing. That's why I even brought in Hack. That's all the book is about. Pushing past our perceptions of limitations. And it's funny because the mind will be a trickster. And that's how Big Sean's dad said it on his album. And it's true, the mind will be a trickster. But the mind gives up before the body does. It tells the body what to do, and then the body picks up on the signal and says, oh, okay, well, the mind said go ahead and give it up. And it's beautiful, and it's almost sometimes easier for us to understand these breakthroughs because the value that our society puts on materialism. We can feel these things easier through a physical breakthrough. Like when we're, let's say, at the gym, we're running, we are pushing ourselves and exerting ourselves, and we just feel and just know no, it's cooked. It's done, it's over right now. But then runner's high kicks in and goes, extra fuel tank, battery pack, we back in, and you go, wait, now I'm even better than I was before. I can do better, I can do more than. And then when we realize that, in that moment of clarity of being in tune with, really being in tune with nature as it is in our inner self, when we really feel that real kick, and you go, wait, what happened to any illnesses that I thought I had? What happens to any of the people that have anxiety will really know, and just generalized anxiety will know how it feels, or I guess few mental illnesses how it feels in your mind to have that always just feels like something's maybe off, wrong, whether that's like impending doom or just you have that anxiety because like I said, you're too far in the future. You can feel how it like bogs down your brain and it just feels like it's just being worked on, but not in the best way, right? When you release yourself and you sit within and you start to experience silence, or you just start to experience not having to entertain a thought. It can be in the same room as you, but you do not have to address it. It has space there, but it finds its way to just pass on. When you start to feel how that works, and you learn how to not be reactive. You learn to respond. And when you start to take that greater control, all the thoughts start to take that same kind of form, and you go, wow, I exist outside of, like my existence exists outside of these thoughts. And these thoughts are really just derivatives of trying to express what is at the core. Your trauma is doing the same thing about you and how you deal with experience. That's really what all it's really doing. That trauma is giving you a crisis to work through and show and reveal. I'm not gonna get so far down into my views of how we reincarnate, maybe in another video, how I believe we do choose things through reincarnation and our experiences. But I'm not going to get into that. But all of these crises and the trauma that brings them about give us an experience. It is literally like the caterpillar going into the butterfly. It is giving us the ability to use our vehicle, really, that we chose to further the agenda that we know that we must extend. That's really what it is. And however you see the plan for creation as you see it. And so trauma is the only thing that really allows us to, like, almost like the arrow, to pull us back, to let us go, to really propel us forward. Without the trauma, there's going to be a stagnancy. But due to the trauma, there is a little bit of, there is a little bit of sinking, there is some pain, there is some pulling back. But it is through that we learn how to handle that trauma, and then we can keep going. We can climb further on the mountain. It's easier. I went to the dunes and I said I was gonna climb this whole mountain, and it's sand. So, I'm running, me and my homie going, and I just thought, I kept going. My legs are burning. I'm like, man, I'm crawling. And I said, well, I'm gonna go. So I had to. My homie was like, I'm good. I'm staying right here. And I'm like, oh man, okay. And then the mind started trying to say, well, he said, and I said, well, I said I'm gonna go. So I run and I fall down. I keep going. And when I made it to the top, the sense of accomplishment that I felt was powerful, and that's the bond that holding your word has. And I need to work on that heavily, working with that. That's one of the 4 agreements. Being true to your word, it's so powerful. It's important. And I want to look at a line from my book. This is a mindset infused with an embodiment of habitual goal setting, achievement, and commitment, which is humans, we love to first approach with the "this is not easy" mentality. But anyone approaching this level of being and decides to take a preemptive strike will always prove to be victorious. The first step is pivotal because it is not a step or action more than it is a commitment through word. Holding this within the forefront of the mind, we can begin to integrate the importance of the relationship between the decision, the commitment, and transformation. They are one. This is the true lesson within this section, beginning and end, but without internalizing it, therefore coming up with this insight by your own means of understanding and inspiration, then I cannot express further what is solidified within your soul. And the most important step in the learning process, integration, is skipped through application. It's important to understand, like I said, the commitment or the decision, the commitment, and the transformation are all one. So the power of holding your word is right there. It's that trifecta. The power of holding your word is actually the decision to what you want to do, the commitment to what you want to do, and the transformation that undergoes or happens to you and your character and what you are. It all happens from keeping your word. And that's a very powerful relationship that I think, again, all is relationship. So if we want to rid ourselves of trauma, if we want to transform into someone who can transform their trauma into something that now heals them and nurtures those that they come into contact with, then we have to have awareness of everything that we've spoken about in this episode, and then we can start to actually see the magic that is in the wounds that we have been avoiding, perpetuating, doing everything but healing. So I think it's important, and like I said, keeping our word, we just showed the emphasis and the importance of doing so and how it's actually tied to transformation through understanding it is a relationship. Really, it's a trifecta of a or a unison of the decision, the commitment, and the transformation. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us. As always, this is Waking Wellness. Let's heal our trauma. Health is well.